Welcome. I am the curator. Today I brought you a story about Jeams Dean's wild life and tragic death, as well as the legend of his cursed car.
Dream as if you'll live forever. Live as if you'll die today.
Numerous celebrated actors and actresses have worked in the film industry, but not all of them have become icons. This raises the question, what makes someone an icon? We naturally expect them to be talented and charismatic, and their aura should captivate the audience. It is often said that it is not necessarily required to be a well-trained artist, but they must possess that extra something that makes them stand out from the crowd. Icons do not merely entertain. They also influence society, shaping it by inspiring and motivating people. The protagonist of today's story did not have a long career, as he only played in 3 major films during his short life. But he remains the only person to have been nominated for an Oscar twice posthumously. Jeams Dean embodied the rebellious youth of the 1950s. After World War II, young people struggled to find their place in the world. They were unsettled, and their values were in flux, allowing them to identify with the characters portrayed by the actor. Jeams Dean's cult status is attributed not only to his tragic death, but also to the rebellion and vulnerability he represented on screen. Humphrey Bogart once said about him, "Dean died at the right time. He left a legend behind. If he had lived, he could never have lived up to the publicity." James Byron Dean was born on February 8, 1931, in Marion, Indiana. His father, Winton Dean, had ancestors among the first settlers in America, and his mother, Mildred Wilson, had Native American heritage. Initially, they lived on a farm, but his father became a dental technician, and due to his job, the family moved to Santa Monica, California. He had a very close relationship with his mother, and the family was struck by tragedy when, in 1938, she was diagnosed with uterine cancer after experiencing severe abdominal pain and sudden weight loss. 2 years later, she passed away from the disease, leaving a gaping void in her 9-year-old son. His father was unable to care for him, so he decided to entrust James to the care of his uncle, Marcus Winslow, and his family, who lived on a farm near Fairmount. One might think that this decision would have strained the relationship between father and son, but it did not. His father made this difficult decision after much deliberation, because he had sold almost everything to pay for his wife's hospital bills, leaving him on the brink of financial ruin. He believed his son's future would be more secure with relatives. Dean never resented his father, and they maintained regular contact. After his wife's death, his father served in World War II and later remarried. Dean felt comfortable on the farm and was a popular student in school due to his outstanding athletic achievements. He played baseball and was a member of the basketball team. His friends called him Jimmy. He also showed a great interest in the arts, playing the violin, sculpting, and beginning to show an interest in acting. During this time, he had a mentor, James DeWeerd, a Methodist minister, with whom he became very close. Some speculate that their relationship might have been more than just a friendship, but this has never been proven. After finishing school, he moved back to Santa Monica to live with his father and stepmother, where he began studying law. However, he only completed 1 semester before realizing that acting interested him much more than memorizing dry legal paragraphs. Despite his father's disapproval, he transferred to the drama department at the University of California, Los Angeles, but he did not complete his studies there either, leaving school at the age of 21. He started his career in commercials, the most famous of which was for Pepsi, and worked as an extra on commercial television.
Pepsi for the Pepsi bound.
His greatest role model was Gary Cooper, from whom he drew inspiration. On the advice of his friend, James Whitmore, he moved to New York, where he finally had the opportunity to act in films and on stage. However, he could not yet make a living from these roles, so he had to work as a bus driver. After several unsuccessful attempts, he became a student at the Actors Studio, which led to roles in Broadway plays. In Hollywood, he appeared in a few less successful, forgettable films, such as Sailor Beware. The breakthrough came for him in 1955 when he landed the role of Cal Trask in Elia Kazan's film East of Eden, a role that seemed tailor-made for him. The film transposed the biblical story of Cain and Abel to America during World War I. Cal hopelessly struggles for his father's love, who is closer to his other, more pious son. The plot depicted a typical dilemma of a teenager of that era, feeling misunderstood by everyone. The generation could identify with the character and through him with the actor. Director Elia Kazan initially did not like Dean, but he was impressed by his acting and how his improvisations made the role more authentic.
Cal! Cal!
Interestingly, at the film's premiere, Marlene Dietrich, who was already a global star, served as the ticket taker. Dean did not attend the premiere, so he did not see the audience's celebration of him. After the highly successful East of Eden, Dean appeared in two more films, Rebel Without a Cause, in which he starred alongside Natalie Wood, who also died tragically, and Giant, where his co-stars were Elizabeth Taylor and Rock Hudson. The world opened up for Dean. He was young, handsome, and successful, feeling like he could do anything he wanted. Girls adored him, and his greatest love was an Italian actress, Pier Angeli. Their relationship did not last long, and it is not entirely clear why it ended. However, it is certain that Angeli's mother opposed it, finding Dean's style objectionable and being disturbed by the fact that he was not a devout Catholic. Dean's sexual orientation remains a topic of debate to this day, with rumors that he had relationships with several men. His biographer, George Perry, claims that he had only one such relationship, with CBS director George Brackett. However, this relationship was not dominated by emotions. It was a typical case of the casting couch, and Dean dropped Brackett as soon as possible. Outside of films, Dean was captivated by speed and the sense of freedom it brought. With the fee he received from East of Eden, he indulged his passion by buying a red MG TD 1953 sports car, which he later traded for a 1955 Porsche Speedster. He participated in the Palm Springs road race, where he finished in second place. He also competed in Santa Barbara, starting from 18th place and managing to fight his way up to 4th place before his car's engine over-revved, forcing him to end the race. During the filming of Giant from June to September, Warner Brothers prohibited Dean from participating in any racing activities, so he put his Lotus Mark 9 in storage. On September 21st, he replaced his Speedster with a newer and faster race car, a silver Porsche 550 Spider. This brings us to another important character in our story. Porsche produced this model from 1953 to 1956, and only 90 units were made during that period, one of which came into Dean's possession just 9 days before his death. The Spider was designed for racing, but there was nothing prohibiting its use on public roads. It was considered one of the finest cars of its time. Made almost entirely of aluminum, it was lightweight, weighing only 1,200 pounds, and with a 110 horsepower, 1,498 cc engine, it could reach speeds of up to 137 miles per hour. The engine was positioned at the rear axle, which provided a more balanced weight distribution, but could also lead to difficult-to-control spins during sudden maneuvers. The car was very low, not even reaching an average person's waist. Of course, the Spider would not meet today's safety standards. To begin with, it did not have seatbelts. The wheels were small relative to its performance, limiting proper traction. The drum brakes were not effective enough for decelerating from high speeds, and the bodywork did not provide sufficient protection in the event of a collision. Dean loved his new car and asked Dean Jeffries to personalize it for him. They painted the number 130 on it, as well as the nickname Little Bastard. Allegedly, Little Bastard was Dean's nickname, given to him by his friend Bill Hickman, a stuntman at Warner Brothers. Another theory, supported by the actor's friends, suggests that Jack L. Warner, the president of Warner Brothers, called Dean Little Bastard during a conflict, and the actor had the name painted on his car as a form of retaliation, showing that he would race despite the ban. Dean entered the Salinas road race, scheduled for October 1st and 2nd. Shortly after purchasing the Porsche, and just a week before his death, he had dinner with Sir Alec Guinness, proudly telling him about his new car and showing it to him. According to Guinness, he had a very bad feeling when he looked at the car and said to Dean, "Please don't get into that car, because if you do, by next Thursday at 10 o'clock you'll be dead." Dean laughed it off, not taking the warning seriously. On September 30th, Dean and his friends were preparing Little Bastard for the weekend race. Originally, the Spider was towed by a Ford Country Squire driven by stuntman Bill Hickman. Along with them was Sanford H. Roth, a professional photographer planning to write an article about the race, and Rolf Wutherick, a Porsche engineer. Wutherick suggested that Dean drive the Spider on the way to the race to break it in and get accustomed to the car. Consequently, Dean and Wutherick got into the Porsche, while the others followed in the Ford. Around 1:15 p.m., they set off from the Hollywood Ranch Market, where they had coffee and donuts. At 2 p.m., they stopped to refuel at a gas station on Ventura Boulevard, before heading north on the Golden State Highway. At 2:30 p.m., OTV Hunter, a highway patrol officer, stopped them at the Meltler station because Dean was driving 65 miles per hour in a 50 miles per hour zone. Hickman, driving the Ford, was also speeding, since he was towing a trailer and should have been driving no more than 45 miles per hour. They then headed west to avoid Bakersfield's slow 25 miles per hour downtown area. At Blackwell's Corner, they stopped to buy some drinks and met Lance Reventlow and Bruce Kessler, who were also heading to Salinas to race. At 5:15 p.m., they left Blackwell's Corner and continued west on U.S. Route 466 towards Paso Robles, about 60 miles away. The road was nearly empty, which emboldened Dean to speed up, leaving the Ford far behind. At 5:45 p.m., a black and white 1950 Ford Tudor was heading east, driven by 23-year-old Donald Turnipseed, a Navy veteran and Cal Poly student. At a Y intersection, Turnipseed turned left towards Fresno. As the Ford crossed the center line, Dean recognized the impending collision and tried to avoid it with a racing maneuver. However, due to lack of time and space, the two cars collided head-on. John Robert White, a witness, reported that the Spider hit the ground 2 or 3 times before veering off the road. Due to the force of the collision, the much heavier Ford skidded 40 feet. Several people stopped to help after the accident, and a nurse detected a faint pulse in Dean's neck. Captain Ernest Tripke and Corporal Ronald Nelson were dispatched to investigate the scene. By the time they arrived, Dean, whose left leg was pinned between the clutch and brake pedals, had been freed from the wreckage. Hickman and Roth arrived about 10 minutes after the crash and assisted in the rescue efforts. Turnipseed, the driver of the Ford, suffered minor injuries, including bruises on his face and a bloody nose. After being questioned, he went home by hitchhiking. Wutherick, who was thrown from the Spider, and the unconscious, dying Dean were placed in an ambulance and transported to the Paso Robles War Memorial Hospital, 27 miles away. Dr. Robert Bossett, the emergency physician, pronounced Dean dead almost immediately upon his arrival at 6:20 p.m. According to his death certificate, the cause of death was a broken neck, but he also sustained a broken jaw, both arms, and multiple internal injuries. Wutherick had a fractured jaw, hip, and thigh bones, and underwent several surgeries but survived the crash. Authorities launched an investigation to determine who was responsible for the fatal accident. Reports suggested that Dean might have been driving at approximately 85 miles per hour. However, based on the position of the wreckage, Corporal Nelson concluded that Dean's actual speed was likely no more than 55 miles per hour. Turnipseed's hearing took place on October 11, 1955, in the San Luis Obispo courtroom. The 23-year-old man stated that he only noticed the low, straight-ahead spider after he had begun his turn, making the collision unavoidable. The sun was just setting, and the silver color of the spider almost blended into the asphalt. To this day, there is debate over who was responsible for the accident. Some blame Dean for driving fast, while others argue that Turnipseed should have been more cautious in starting his turn and given the right-of-way to the straight-ahead spider. However, after the hearing, Turnipseed was not found guilty, so he did not face any legal consequences. Nevertheless, the accident haunted him for the rest of his life, as many viewed him as Jeams Dean's killer. He avoided publicity and only gave one interview to the Tulare Advance-Register newspaper immediately after the incident. In the later years, he ran a very successful and profitable electrical contracting business and passed away in 1995 at the age of 63 from lung cancer. The accident also took a toll on Dean's passenger, Wutherick, who was also blamed by some fans for the actor's death. Wutherick's nerves were shattered, and he claimed to have received numerous threatening letters, leading him to require psychiatric treatment for the rest of his life. In 1957, he left the United States and returned to West Germany, where he worked for Porsche's test department and international rally teams. However, he couldn't escape his fate, as in 1981, at the age of 53, he was driving drunk when he lost control of the vehicle. Just like decades earlier with Dean, he also had to be freed from the wreckage and lost his life at the scene. It's said that just moments before the fatal accident, Dean said to Wutherick, "Is the guy going to stop? He's got to see us." The notion that these were the actor's last words has become legendary, but reports suggest that, for understandable reasons, Wutherick couldn't recall anything from the moments immediately before and after the accident, so the veracity of this claim is questionable. Dean's funeral was held on October 8, 1955, in Fairmount, Indiana, not far from the farm where he spent his childhood. His coffin was closed to conceal the injuries to his face and upper body. It's estimated that around 600 mourners were present, while 2,400 fans gathered outside the church during the procession to accompany the actor on his final journey. James Dean's life journey came to an end, but his beloved car, the Porsche Spider, continued to claim victims. The car's association with an alleged curse became part of cultural mythology, largely due to George Barris, who, as the owner of the wreck, reported on a mysterious series of accidents between 1956 and 1960. The wrecked Spider was deemed a total loss by the insurance company, and a fair compensation was paid to Dean's father, after which the wreck was sold to a junkyard. There was subsequently high demand for parts of the Spider, as collectors and racers bought them, since some components remained in usable condition. Dr. William F. Eschrich, who raced alongside Dean on 3 occasions, bought the engine and installed it into his own Lotus 9 racing car, which he then named POTUS. Dr. Troy McHenry also fitted parts into his car and competed in a race, during which Eschrich crashed in a turn, sustaining serious injuries that left half of his body paralyzed, while McHenry collided with a tree and instantly died. However, It is important to note that in neither case did the failure of the installed components cause the accident. We know for sure that these two documented incidents were related to the Spider. The further stories come from Barris, and their basis in reality is questionable. George Barris toured the country with the purchased wreck, holding exhibitions and presenting it in high schools to draw attention to the importance of safe driving. According to his account, the Spider once fell off the stand during an exhibition, burying a spectator underneath. Before the next tour, the car was stored in a warehouse, which caught fire the following night, destroying everything except the Spider. While being transported on a trailer, the driver lost control of the truck, and the Porsche, coming loose from the trailer, crushed the driver to death. In 1960, Barris was transporting the wreck back from Florida to California on a truck when it mysteriously disappeared from the platform during a stop. To this day, no one knows where Jeams Dean's car is. Some speculate that the wreck remained in Barris's possession, as he wanted to maintain the myth surrounding the Spider. In 2005, a museum offered a $1 million reward for anyone who could credibly prove they had the Spider. In 2006, a small piece of aluminum surfaced at an auction, claimed by its owner to be a part of Jeams Dean's lost car. An investigation confirmed the man's claim, and the palm-sized piece of metal was purchased by a museum in Illinois specializing in vintage car rarities for $9,000. A junction of Highway 46 and Highway 41 was named after Jeams Dean, but due to road realignment, the actual site of the accident is about 100 feet away from it. In April 2023, construction began on an interchange that eliminates the left turn from Highway 46 onto Highway 41. In 1977, Japanese businessman Seita Onishi erected a memorial in Cholima, about half a mile from the accident site. The memorial surrounds a tree and features the actor's birth and death dates and times, as well as a handwritten quote from his favorite book, The Little Prince, by his friend William Bart. What is essential is invisible to the eye. Two plaques opposite the tree depict Dean's life and the circumstances of his death. However, there is another memorial at the actual accident site, which has become a pilgrimage site for fans who leave various offerings for Dean, such as cigarettes, alcoholic beverages, or women's underwear. These places not only commemorate the actor, but also remind those involved in traffic to take responsibility not only for their own lives, but also for the lives of others. It's chilling how Jeams Dean himself shed light on this shortly before his death.
Well, Gig, I think I'd better take off.
Oh, wait a minute, Jimmy. One more question. Do you have any special advice for the young people who drive?
Take it easy driving. The life you might save might be mine. You know?
The title of the next episode is Frank Sinatra and the Mob. I've been the curator. If you like this episode, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. And remember, the darkest stories are written by life.